Hello, and welcome to Have Your Say. I'm Ann Minicozzi, founder of the Community Breakfast of the Main Line Undoing Racism Day, here with our co-host, Diana Robertson, president of the NAACP Mainline Branch. And our guest today is John Fennell, who is the Director of Community Engagement in Senator Daylin Leach's office. And welcome, John. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So, John, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be in the Senator's office?
Sure. Again, my name is John Fennell. I'm the Director of Community Engagement for Senator Daylin Leach. My background is a long and distinguished one, but I came to... I originally started as an intern with the senator back in 2009, so his first year in the Senate. I was getting involved in politics and was in school at the time and wanted an internship to learn, what politics was. So he was my state senator at the time, so I walked in and said, hey, do you have any internships? And they gave me an internship, and that led me to working on the campaign side, which is what I did immediately after. At the time, this was 2009, so there was a gubernatorial election, and I went on and worked on that gubernatorial election. And I had always planned to come back to the legislature as soon as possible to get a job in the legislature, but I enjoyed campaigning so much, helping people. I've done it all over the country at this point. And then after 10 years, almost 10 years of that, campaigning is a lot of work. It's a 12-hour job, 7 days a week in a lot of cases, eating a lot of bad food, no exercise. I didn't mind the pizza and the chicken fingers, but after a while I wanted to learn the other side of politics. You have campaigning, you have legislative, and so at the time I was living in D.C. I was a consultant for a firm down in D.C. and I wanted to move back. I'm from the area, born and raised in King of Prussia, and so I wanted to move back home. And at the time, the senator had an opening, and since I knew a lot of the people there, I inquired as to would that be a great fit for me, and so I interviewed, and he brought me in as a constituent service person, dealing with a lot of the community, and then I kind of went to him after a couple months and said, I want to get more involved in the community. I want to be outside the office, talking to people about what can benefit them. And so he said, how about you become my Director of Community Engagement? And so that's how I get to do fun projects like this.
Okay. Do you remember your first impressions when you first interned? And you were with him really at the very beginning of his service.
I remember thinking, this is a very down-to-earth person. Politicians were always this lofty person, a president, a senator, a congressman, these lofty people who were almost kind of detached from us. But I remember the first thing I learned about the senator, he asked, I was asked, what do you, where are you from? where'd you go to school? And I told him where I went to school. I went to boarding school. He's like, which boarding school? And I told him, he's like, so did I. And it was at that point I realized, hey, he's just like me. And working for him, I realized he is a regular person, and that was one of the most important things. And that's one of the most important things I've learned in politics is politicians are just like you and me. They have all the same flaws and all the same good things about them. They're just like us. They just hold a position that we hold it in high esteem. But the first thing I remember is, oh, he is just like me. And that was one of the things that made me comfortable with him, being in that office and being able to, over the years I had seen him in many other circumstances. I had, helped out on his campaigns as a volunteer. But the one thing was that I really connected with him and understood, and we had he's just a regular guy, and that was the most comforting thing about it.
So what is the job description of a state senator?
State senator, so just like on the federal level, you have a senator, you have a U.S. senator, and then you have a U.S. congressperson. it's the same way on the state level. So in the Pennsylvania State Legislature, there are 50 senators, and they each represent, I'm not exactly sure what the number is, but they all represent an equal number of people. And so their job is to represent their constituents. So Senator Leach has Lower Merion, has King of Prussia, has Bridgeport, has East Norriton, and a couple others that I'm forgetting off the top of my head. And all of those areas have issues, have things that they need from the state. And he goes to the state and represents that at the state level. So if there is a specific issue, say stormwater. We have a big stormwater problem, especially here in Radnor. So, he would go to the legislature and he would say, we need more money for stormwater relief or things like that. Anything that makes the people in his district's lives better. The one thing he always says, anytime he sits down and talks to someone, he says, how can I make your life better? That's his job. Real simple, real easy. He makes the lives of his constituents better. Okay.
So now, in your capacity, when you're going out, what is your goal when you're going out?
So I have a number of goals, but the main goal, and this is a goal this is a directive that the senator gave, because this is something that long before I got there, he was always an advocate for, is giving voice to the voiceless. So my job is to go out into the community and find out what those issues are. So that, because not often people are going to call the office and say, I have this problem. Some people do, and we'll get to the stats on that in a little bit, but not everyone knows to call their state rep if they have an issue. Not everyone knows that this is what their job is. So my job is to go out and tell people that, is to bring that message to people where they are, where they live. And that's something we're learning is important, is meeting people where they are. So being out in the community, instead of being in the office all day waiting for people to call us, we want to be proactive and go out there. So I go out and find issues that people are interested in, and I bring it back to the senator so that he can weigh in on it. He may decide, I want to pass legislation on that, or he's thinking about passing legislation on something, and I'm out in the community and people say, hey, you know what, I have a problem with this. Here's why. And so, maybe we set up a meeting so that he can hear those issues, so that he can make an informed decision when he's up in Harrisburg.
Okay. So you mentioned, certain services. So what specifically are some of those services that your office provides?
So anything that deals with state agencies. One of the perfect example, PennDOT. People will call up and say, over by Martin's Dam, there was a big hole in the street, and someone called and said, hey, on the side of the road, every time I come around, my car gets stuck in this pothole, and I see other people getting stuck in this pothole. Can you guys do something about it? So we called PennDOT and said, hey, can you guys take a look at this? It's a safety hazard to our constituents. Our constituents are calling. So PennDOT, anything, like I said, anything to do with state agencies. So unemployment. If you have an issue with unemployment, that was one of the first things I did when I, as a campaigner, November my job ends regardless. And so I would go into the senator's office and say, hey, I need help filling out my unemployment. I can't get someone on the phone. So we have contacts within the state agencies so that we call them. Birth and death certificates. If you need a birth certificate or a death certificate, if you need it expedited, because
passports or something.
Right. Passports is really the big one. You need a passport. You need a birth certificate to do that. Now, we don't handle passports because that's federal. So we will pass you on. We'll ask you who is your congressperson. If you don't know that, we can look that up for you and pass you on to there. A couple other things. If you're having problems with PICO, if your bill is too high, you may have lost your job, and you need help with PICO, we can call PICO and talk to them and try to help out. Help find the solution. Excuse me. rent rebates and LAHEAP, heating assistance. If you have problems with, if you've hit a rough patch and you need money with heating assistance, we can work with them to help you get cash grants to help you pay for your heating. Rent rebates, people fit a criteria and they can get, I think up to $500 back. And those are all little things that help, the disadvantaged in our communities.
Right.
And so we want to make sure people know this because people don't take advantage of these things. Placards, if you have a disability placard, you may need that. Then some of the fun things, tours of the Capitol. If you want to come up to Harrisburg and go on a tour, we can set that up for you. One of my favorites is if we have a constituent who does something outstanding, we'll recognize them up in Harrisburg on the Senate floor. So the senator will stand up, will give their accomplishments. They'll be seated in the gallery. He'll ask them to stand up, and then he'll say a couple words about them, and then he'll ask everyone, all this, my fellow senators, please join me in recognizing, and they clap for them. And then citations.
Yes.
And then we'll get citations for people. If you've, as you know, if you've done outstanding accomplishments in the community. We really want to honor and recognize people within our district because that's another part of the senator's job is to promote the district. People want to hear about some of the great things that are going on in this area, and he has a voice as an elected official, so we want to use that voice to amplify other voices. We've got great community organizations in our district, from being in Ardmore to Norristown to East Norriton. We've got these great organizations. Sometimes people just don't hear about them.
Right.
But if the senator, we'll do videos of these organizations and we'll put it out on social media. Because people follow the senator. He's popular on, and so people will follow him. And so, we like to do that. And one other thing, anything to do with state assistance, so food stamps, welfare, we can also help people navigate the application process. It's usually long, it's usually detailed, so we'll help them with that. When we do, though, and I like to let people know this, when it comes to health, the Department of Health, 9 times out of 10, we're going to need a HIPAA waiver just because of the legal implications of that. So we will ask you, please fill out this waiver, and then we'll be able to help with a variety of things.
Okay, great.
And I just want to note that the reason why you were smiling about what John was saying is that John, at the Mainline Martin Luther King Association event, presented you with a citation, a recognition of your work in the NAACP for a number of years.
Yes.
Which, how many years is it now that you've been president of the NAACP Mainline branch?
So I've been president since 2013, but I've been with the NAACP for like 32 years. So,
so definitely worth recognizing.
It definitely was.
And that was a really nice event too.
Yes.
Yeah, that was really good.
And it was one of those that I volunteered. The senator was unable to be there, and I jumped at the opportunity because we've worked together before, and you've been very helpful to a lot of the things that I've talked about previously. And it was one of those opportunities. Look, I wanted to give back. I wanted to be there because you've helped us. You've helped people in our district. So I wanted to make sure that we were there to honor you and say thank you for what you've done.
Yes. So I definitely appreciated that, but because I think, as you were saying, that very often people in general just don't know they have problems, they have issues, and they get stuck and they just don't know where to go. They really don't, and so
the first place should be to call your elected official. There are so many things that we we may not be able to handle it, but we can find an answer. A couple other things I wanted to mention. We have a notary, so if anyone has, and it's free, so you can come into our office and get any documents notarized. And then what we also do is SEPTA senior IDs for seniors. It's a card that they can get that they can ride public transportation for free, and it's open to anyone.
Oh, I heard about that.
And it's another thing that we do for free for anyone in our district. And it's nice because the other option is to drive into the city and stand in line. It takes all of 3 minutes for us to do it in our office. So these are all things that our office is able to do, and we want people to come to us for them, so that, because again, as the senator always says, how can we make your life easier today? And these are just some of the little things, because navigating bureaucracy is a pain, and we have an ability to try to cut through that when we can to help our constituents.
Right. So how does your office communicate in a way that people would know? So the people, the constituents that are under the senator's office, how is that communicated? Because we know, I know that social media is out there, but not everybody uses social media.
Right.
So how otherwise would people know?
Traditional mail. Every once in a while, we have a pamphlet that we have that lists all of our services. So we'll mail that out sometimes. We'll take these pamphlets and put them in township municipal buildings, so people come in with questions. They know that they can just, they walk in there and see, oh, here's what I can do for you, and then they can take that. We go to events, so when there's an event, like the Martin Luther King Day event in Haverford, we would set up a table. We'll have, these are the services we have. Here's our phone numbers. We'll just be there to answer questions. A lot of times people just have questions, legislative questions. This is what is going on with this bill? HB 123, SB 234. What do people will call and ask those questions, or people will come up to us and say, oh, I've been meaning to ask this question. And us being in the public, community days, fairs, anything like that, where we're in the district, we just want to be accessible to people, so that, and most of these, the senator's usually walking around, meeting people, sampling the food, and talking to constituents. People will stop him and say, oh, Senator, we have a question. And if he can't answer it, he points at us, and we try to, get that answer. We give out our email addresses. You can always look on the website to find our phone number. We're there 4:30 to 8:30 to 4:30, Monday to Friday. And we're there to answer. That's one of my main jobs, is answering questions, answering constituents' questions.
Right. Okay. All right. So now you briefly mentioned, and I know you were going to go into that further, the data, the statistics of the constituents report. So if you want to talk about that a little bit.
So last year, 2017, 2018, we had 2,070 constituent cases. Those are people who have called our office, and we track everything. We keep a record of, what did you call about? And so some of the things, the largest is legislative questions. People always call with legislative questions, because that's the easiest thing you could think of to call your representative about. And you see it a lot, people saying, call your representative, talk to your representative. So that's what they do. They'll call, they'll have questions, they'll say, I hear this bill is coming up for a vote. Please tell Senator to vote no, or vote yes. And these are important because he may have his opinion on something, but he represents the constituents. So if enough people call and say, hey, we got 20 calls, 10 here, 15 here. That's not 25, but I'm not a counter. But we keep, the reason we keep track of these is because the senator will say, hey, where are people on this issue? And it's because he needs to be informed as to how his constituents want. It's not because he wants to get reelected, it's because he's there to represent them. And if we don't know what people are thinking or people are feeling, we can't really, advocate for them or represent them appropriately. The second biggest thing we've done is SEPTA senior IDs. People come into our office, or we'll go out into the community. We're at the Palm Center I think once a month. We're at other community centers around the district, and then PennDOT assistance. Like I said, people. The most basic thing of since we've had cars is filling potholes. And then Department of Health and Human Services, death certificates, birth certificates, help with LAHEAP, help with assistance, be it food stamps or any of the other types of assistance. And then things like the budget questions in a couple months, right around June-ish, I think it is. Right now, budget, they have budget hearings now. That's where the senator can ask questions. If people have questions that they want the senator to know about, or if they want him to ask about, this is the opportunity to call our office and say, hey, can you ask him what is he going to do about Cheney University, or what is he going to do about Temple University, or any of those types of things, because all the legislators have an opportunity to query the department heads. So budget questions and legislative questions are all one, but I know in a couple months we will be inundated with them, and then when session goes back and towards the end, people will call again saying, hey, I want you to vote on this. I hear that this is going to pass, so please vote on that or vote against that.
Do you have calls where, or contact where someone is asking, how do you start a particular piece of legislation?
Sure.
So it's not even written or anything yet. I know he's introduced a number of different pieces of legislation through the years.
A number of ways this happens. The senator's office, every senator can structure their office any way they want. They can do heavy constituent service. They can be heavy on policy. They could not have policy. They could have a legislative director or not a legislative director. One of the jobs that the senator has, in addition to having a person like me who does community engagement, is he also has an outreach person. And this person is focused on working with advocates. So a perfect example of this would be one of the senator's signature pieces is medical marijuana. And when they were pushing this along, they had to find a Republican, because in our legislature, it's always best to have bipartisan. And so one of the things that our outreach person did was work with a group called Moms Demanding Action, and they were one of the strongest advocates that helped push this legislation across, because they sat down and talked to the senator, they talked to our office, they learned about how to advocate so that they can get their message across. And then what we did was we said to them, okay, you got Daylin, well, now you need to get 49 other senators. So go to your senator and talk to them. And we don't just say, hey, go talk to this person. We give them information. We give them best practices. We'll say, always leave something behind. Always have this, so that they can be the most effective advocates they are. And this is something that the senator does that most other offices don't do, is have a person who's dedicated to advocacy. Because for him, it's like giving voice to the powerless or to the voiceless, and that's an important thing for him to do. That's why he has a whole, one person who's dedicated to making sure that, and before that she did fracking. These are all things that affect, and so she would work with these groups. She would say, this is the best way to advocate for your position. Here's who you want to talk to. A lot of times people call up and say, I want Senator Leach to do this. He's already there. Oh, well, what do I do next? How can I, call another senator, call a friend who's in that senator's district and have them call that senator, because you need you need 49 others to sign on or agree, or at least 50% in some cases. So our office is, and that's something that we actually should put as what we help with. We help with advocacy. making sure people can talk to their legislators in a way that can get them effective change.
That's a surprise to me. That's something I didn't know about, because that is an important responsibility, that you're educating constituents in how to pass legislation.
We did a whole good stock, we called it. Last year, it was an advocacy boot camp is what we billed it as.
Okay.
And we had it at St. Joe's University, and we invited panelists to come in and talk to people about how to, we had a communication specialist. We had people from all different walks of life who would come to learn about how they can be advocates. And this was spawned because in 2017, right before I started, we had a huge, I forgot what we called it, but we got about 800 people into a room to talk. It was called a resistance forum. That's what it was called. We got a bunch of people to come into a room, about 800 people, and we talked about what are our next steps. How can we, better advocate for ourselves? How can we, meaning individuals, constituents, citizens, be the as Gandhi said, be the change we want to see in the world.
Right.
And this is something, we did it with the Resistance Forum, we've done it with Good Stock, we have a person on staff, it's something that I've been trained in. We have at least 3 people I can think of on staff who have all worked in advocacy in some way or another, who can help constituents in this area.
Okay.
That's great.
So, just quickly, so does he have public hearings on certain issues from time to time?
Yep.
To get feedback from the public and your constituents on those issues?
The
one format used?
Yeah, up in Harrisburg, they'll have hearings. The one I'm remembering is I think felony murder. He had a hearing on that where he heard from people who went to jail themselves, or they had loved ones who went to jail for felony murder, which is really, really briefly is when you are part of a criminal act happens and someone dies. You may not have pulled the trigger, but you hid the weapon, or you drove the car, or you were there. Sometimes these people get a longer sentence than the actual person who pulled the trigger. So he had a whole hearing on that. It was one of the first hearings that I went to in my job, and it was just interesting. It was interesting and heartbreaking to hear these personal stories of people and what they've been through. Okay, so the information you provided has been great. Thank you. We thank you once again for being our guest today. And we hope that to our viewing audience, we hope that the information provided has been informative, given you a different perspective, and most importantly, has helped you to be able to have your say. Thank you.